For which he sought after. For which he sought after. Hit it. Merry Christmas, everybody, and welcome to our special Christmas show. Yes.
A tape submitted to CBS censors sparked immediate concern, setting off alarm bells throughout the network. What was expected to be a typical light-hearted comedy routine from the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour turned out to be something far bolder, a sharp political message unlike anything CBS had aired before. Tom Smothers kicked off the segment with his usual humorous tone, but it quickly shifted from comedy to provocation. Just 6 days later, the show was abruptly cancelled. No explanation, no press conference, and no farewell. That controversial episode never aired, yet its impact rippled through the television industry, triggering a fierce clash between creative freedom and network censorship. It marked a turning point in the battle over free speech on American TV. To understand how this moment reshaped television, we have to look back at the media landscape of the 1960s. At the time, American TV was tightly controlled by three major networks: NBC, ABC, and CBS. These networks aired content that conformed strictly to the moral and cultural norms of the post-war era. CBS, in particular, thrived with safe, family-friendly shows like The Ed Sullivan Show and Bonanza. But as the Vietnam War escalated and countercultural movements gained momentum, CBS needed a way to attract younger audiences. That's how the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour came to be, not as an act of rebellion, but as a strategic ratings move to compete with NBC's Sunday night success. Premiering on February 5, 1967, the show initially followed a familiar format: musical acts, gentle humor, and friendly banter. But behind the scenes, Tom Smothers had other plans. He saw the show as a vehicle for change and slowly began inserting sharp social and political commentary. While CBS focused on numbers, Tom pushed the boundaries of what television could be. His brother Dick served as a balancing voice, softening Tom's more provocative bits to keep the network appeased. Gradually, the show evolved into something groundbreaking. It featured artists like Pete Seeger, Joan Baez, Jefferson Airplane, and The Who, whose songs carried clear messages about war, injustice, and civil rights. The writers' room also became a hub of youthful political energy, with talents like Steve Martin and Mason Williams contributing increasingly satirical content. Comedy sketches turned into biting critiques of military policy, the church, and civil liberties, often cloaked in variety show charm. The response was mixed. College students embraced the show as a cultural touchstone, quoting lines and sharing bootleg copies. But conservative viewers, especially in the South, were outraged. Letters flooded CBS, and some affiliates even threatened to drop the program. Yet the ratings stayed strong, so CBS let it continue, but under heightened scrutiny. Tom often missed censorship deadlines to sneak controversial content through, frustrating network executives. Despite internal tension, the show entered its second season with cultural momentum. It was no longer just comedy, it was one of the only platforms of dissent on mainstream television. Musical guests pushed the envelope. Jefferson Airplane delivered psychedelic performances. The Who famously destroyed their equipment live. Joan Baez sang for her husband, a jail draft resister, though CBS edited out her dedication. Even the comedy got sharper. Pat Paulson, portraying a mock presidential candidate, gave absurd but incisive speeches satirizing political nonsense. One campaign promise: "I will build more potholes to test the patience of voters." The final blow came with comedian David Steinberg, who delivered monologues styled as irreverent religious sermons. That was too much for CBS. The network, already nervous, decided to pull the plug. And so, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour was canceled, its most daring episode shelved. But its legacy sealed. It had redefined what was possible on television, igniting a lasting debate about censorship, politics, and artistic freedom. In October 1968, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour aired a sketch blending biblical narratives with sharp anti-war commentary, igniting over 300 complaints in just 1 week. Despite the backlash, the sketch resonated deeply with college audiences. Transcripts appeared in student newspapers, and bootleg recordings circulated widely. But CBS, facing pressure from advertisers and affiliates, began to crack down. By early 1969, the network demanded full scripts 10 days in advance. Tom Smothers frequently missed the deadlines, escalating tension between the show's creators and the network. When Tom invited comedian David Steinberg back, despite explicit warnings. CBS saw it as an open defiance. The resulting episode, produced in April 1969, featured Steinberg's most provocative but yet a sermon delivered in the voice of a rabbi that linked Moses' refusal to support Pharaoh to the anti-war movement. The line, "Sorry, Mr. President, take your army and go," was seen by CBS executives as a direct jab at President Nixon. The show ended with a symbolic musical performance by a folk group singing "No More Promised Lands," urging young people to reject lies and reshape their future. As Steinberg shouted, "Peace, not war. Preach it," and threw his shawl into the audience, the message was clear. CBS refused to air the episode, citing a missed review deadline. Tom Smothers countered that the delay occurred in New York, not on his end in Hollywood. CBS chairman William Paley demanded that Steinberg's segment be removed. Tom refused. On April 4, 1969, without warning or a press conference, CBS canceled the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour and replaced it with Hee Haw, a tame rural comedy show. Though never aired in the U.S., the banned episode ran in Canada via CTV and quickly found its way into student culture through bootlegs. College newspapers and youth publications dissected the episode, calling it a powerful farewell to a show that had dared to challenge the status quo. The public response was polarized. Young viewers saw CBS's actions as a betrayal of free speech, and protests broke out in cities across America, particularly around CBS affiliates. Conservative groups, meanwhile, applauded the cancellation as a moral necessity. The end of the show marked more than a scheduling change. It exposed the limits of what American television was willing to say during a time of deep political division. There was no scandal or ratings dip, just a 5-minute anti-war sermon, and that was enough to end one of the most-watched shows on TV. For Tom and Dick Smothers, the cancellation was devastating. Tom, perceived as defiant and politically risky, became virtually unemployable in the industry, while Dick, though more moderate, was still closely associated with the show and faced similar setbacks. Career opportunities vanished almost overnight. Behind the scenes, a legal battle began. The Smothers brothers sued CBS for breach of contract, arguing the late delivery excuse was a cover to suppress political content. After 4 years, in 1973, they won the case and were awarded more than $770,000 for violation of their co-production clause. But the victory was bittersweet. They never regained their former prominence. Their personal relationship also took a toll. In later interviews, Dick admitted he often disagreed with Tom's refusal to compromise, believing a softer approach might have saved the show and allowed it to reach more people. Still, the brothers remained close offstage, continuing to perform live in small venues for devoted fans long after their television careers ended. The cancellation sent a shockwave through the entertainment industry. It served as a warning to up-and-coming creators about the cost of challenging power structures. One of those future creators was Lorne Michaels, who later created Saturday Night Live. Michaels acknowledged the Smothers brothers as pioneers, saying there would be no SNL without them. The Comedy Hour became a symbol of censorship, with its banned content traded on underground videotapes and preserved in personal archives. Over the years, public perception of the show shifted. What was once seen as divisive became revered as visionary. In 2008, nearly 40 years after the show was canceled, Tom Smothers received an honorary Emmy. In his acceptance speech, he said simply, "Peace is harder than war," quote, now etched into the legacy of the show. In 2010, Tom and Dick were inducted into the Television Academy Hall of Fame, a long overdue recognition of their impact. Beyond their place in entertainment history, their story became part of the broader struggle for free expression in America. By the early 1970s, both brothers had even made it onto President Nixon's infamous enemies list, a symbolic confirmation that their voices had truly rattled the political establishment. By 2022, something extraordinary happened. The entire archive of the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, including original scripts, videotapes, and even long-buried unaired sketches, was transferred to the University of California, Santa Barbara. For the first time, researchers had access to internal documents and materials CBS once tried to erase from history. Digitization began peeling back the layers of this radical show, especially for younger audiences who had never experienced the chaotic brilliance of protest-era television. When Tom Smothers passed away in late 2023, the internet exploded with tributes, vintage clips, meme-ready moments, and heartfelt nods from modern comedic heavyweights like Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, and Sarah Silverman. These weren't just sympathy posts, they were acknowledgments of a trailblazer, someone whose blend of satire and social critique laid the groundwork for today's boldest voices in comedy. What once lurked in dusty VHS tapes traded on college campuses now lives loudly on YouTube, TikTok, and Reddit. The show's once controversial sketches, once deemed too hot for TV, are now viral hits. Iconic catchphrases like "Mom always like you best" have been reborn as ironic memes, while clips like Pat Paulson's 1968 mock campaign speech, where waiting was a proposed solution to everything, now seem eerily suited to the modern political circus. The rediscovery of the Smothers Brothers is not some quaint act of nostalgia, it's a long overdue acknowledgement that this show wasn't ahead of its time, it was from the future. Students, researchers, and filmmakers continue to mine the UC Santa Barbara archives, unearthing Tom Smothers' handwritten notes, unaired material, and snark-laced CBS memos that chronicle the network's squeamish attempts at censorship. Exhibits now showcase not just the final televised sketches, but the behind-the-scenes tug-of-war for creative freedom. And today's comedic voices Oliver, Trevor Noah, Hassan Minhaj necessarily borrow the format, but they absolutely channel the same rebellious spirit. The Smothers Brothers proved something essential. Comedy isn't just entertainment, it's protest. It's commentary. It's cultural resistance. The show no longer airs, but it lives on through punchlines, viral clips, academic conferences, and whispered admiration from comedians who understand the tightrope walk of saying something that matters. When the once-banned sermon sketch was screened at a memorial during the New York Television Festival, a younger audience watched in stunned silence. Not because it was outdated, but because it wasn't. It was sharper, braver, and more unfiltered than most of what passes for political commentary on today's major networks. The Smothers Brothers didn't set out to become iconic. They simply refused to shut up. And for that, they were silenced. But in being silenced, they became legends. So if you think this story still matters, if you believe a show like this could still make waves today, drop a comment. Share this video and remind people that somewhere between stand-up specials and sketch shows, there was once a comedy act so dangerous it made CBS break a sweat. And if you haven't subscribed already, do it because there are banned episodes, unheard stories, and censored truth still waiting to be seen.